Hey everybody, Brian Good here. A lot to talk about, so I'm going to get right to it because we're going to cover a lot of stuff, including some data about the upcoming winter. We'll talk about that. There's Maria, by the way, heading out to sea. And here's our front, although it's more of the moisture front. It's two fronts, really, that we're dealing with over the next 12 hours. Let me explain. Let me take you into wave country first. Visible satellite shows this band of clouds right in through here. Now, we define fronts in many ways. Wind shifts and by moisture are the two main things that we can identify a front by. And sometimes they're not exactly at the same spot. You can have a wind shift boundary, then you have a moisture boundary that comes in behind it because the front is so weak as far as it's a sloppy pressure field on it that it's not exactly stacked up perfectly as a strong front with convergence and forcing, and we would have thunderstorms otherwise going crazy here today. But instead, they're displaced, and that's the reason why we are not talking about severe weather and all that kind of stuff. So this is a wind shift that's coming through, it looks like, and the wind arrows have been showing that moving into the northwest parts of wave country. But notice the temperatures. The cooler air is lagging behind a good 200 miles. If the front's right through here, the cooler air's got a while until this evening to arrive. And when you look at the moisture is also lagging. That's why we're going to keep the rain chance in the forecast for this afternoon, as the moisture boundary is back here around St. Louis. And until that moves in, you really won't feel a big difference. The wind may be coming from a different area, but until we get the dew point down, the temperature profile down, then you're going to really see that difference. But again, that'll be later on. So let's look at the HRRR model now. Here's the current radar trends. A few showers in Illinois. Here's where it has rain forecast. Notice it's a little jumpy on that stuff in southwest Indiana. It's detecting the front, it's what it's doing, and the clouds developing, and it's trying to generate a shower out of that. But obviously we don't have that, so it didn't initialize great, but better than some of the other models we've looked at. As we head through time, notice we continue to warm up well into the 80s, in fact, even upper 80s at times as we did this afternoon. I've got us in at 90 because we have a tendency to really shoot up there thermometer wise, but it will just depend on how much cloud cover really fills in here today. It would depend on whether it's 87, 88, or maybe 90. Either way, very warm for the afternoon. But then we get the moisture boundary pushing in around 3 o'clock, and that's when we start to get these downpours that pop, and even some thunderstorms. I wouldn't rule it out. Some lightning and thunder, again, nothing severe, but some small little cells may begin to develop on the radar trends as we head into the afternoon period. And then that's the moisture boundary. Then we get the cool air that will rush in behind that, but that'll take until this evening to filter in, and then things will quiet down after that. All right, so looking good. So beautiful weather in the 70s the next several days. We do have another front that will wrap its way in an upper level trough as we head into Friday afternoon. It may increase the cloud cover for a while for afternoon hours on Friday, but it's not going to change our temperature much other than keeping us on the cool side intact, keep that cool air in place all the way Friday night into Saturday. Then we see a pattern flip, and this is where we run into problems for next week, which we've been talking about all week long here. But yellow's high pressure, dry weather basically. Green's low pressure or unsettled weather, which is rain and clouds and so forth. So here's the GFS. We have this front here on the GFS that's showing up. Here's the high. GFS is trying to bring that front in here before fading it out as we head into Tuesday. You see there was a bit of green there and it faded out because the high is still fairly strong. I increased the clouds, put a 10% chance in to account that maybe some of that moisture may make its way into Kentucky. The Euro, as you'll see in a minute, doesn't agree with that and goes mainly sunny, which we may switch the forecast back to as we get closer. But we'll play it safe here because the Canadian is also hinting at an idea that something may drop in here for Tuesday, but fading. Again, it's going to be fading because the high is going to win out. Then after that, the high does get control of our weather for the rest of the week. And very active. I mean, it's just constant parade of storms up in here. And then you got this subtropical jet way down in here. And then you got this ridge. And then you got the tropics just reacting to the ridge south of that. Anytime you get this much high pressure involved, you're going to get lower pressures here. And that's going to create the tropical activity. And that's why we're talking about, we're not done with the hurricanes yet. We're going to be hearing a lot about that, I got a feeling, unfortunately, until October. For us, though, it means back to a summertime pattern, which I know does not thrill a lot of you. Here's the Euro. Here's that boundary. As we head into the end of the weekend, here's the high. Notice, again, the high says, nope, you are not coming in anywhere close to us. We've got this, and it has control over us. But then the high does weaken a bit more than the GFS does as we head toward that following weekend. At that point, that's going to open the floodgates for anything tropical-wise to enter the Gulf Coast region, but also it will allow us to feel the effects of what's happening. A very amplified pattern here. It's going to open up the door for this activity to drop down like this to the Great Lakes. So I don't know if we'll get a tropical activity or not. In fact, I actually doubt it right now, because the way this is positioning with the troughs, I think these troughs will actually force anything that comes in from the tropics and the Gulf to quickly cross Florida or the southeast and get out to sea. But we will feel the effects of these fronts and some cooler weather after the 7th. So mid-month still looks like a cool down is potentially showing up. So this is how it trended the 14-day now on the earliest alert. 80s. I had 90s in there, and everyone was thinking, oh no, the 90s are coming back. I'm talking about 90 right now. It's the way it's looking. Not a huge deal, but still, it's a summertime feel. So around the 6th and 7th, leading into that weekend, and then we should start to see everything, that high breakdown, and feel the effects of that. That's how the forecast is trending, okay? So that's it for the weather side of things over the next 2 weeks. Now let me talk about the winter setup here. We talk about analog sometimes, where analogs is when you take the weather pattern that you're in now, and the computer analyzes the data over the past several decades. We've had weather records in the database, and it spits out the other years that were very similar to this pattern. And sometimes you can use them to help forecast how things are going to trend in the future. I wasn't a fan of them originally 7 years ago. I'm becoming more of a fan because we're adding more years to it. The more we add years to this, the more accurate that actually can be and help you out. But notice the analog years. The number one match is 2007, September 22nd. Number 2 is 1998. That happens to be our record high today, by the way, 92 degrees, 1998. But notice that 2007 is listed there 3 times. So I decided to look and see, and then other meteorologists have mentioned this too, that 2007 keeps showing up as a common analog year. So when looking at that, we have a forecast of a weak La Nina as we head into this winter. Again, we were under this La Nina watch we did a blog about not too long ago. But when you look at that year, 2007 into the beginning of 2008, we did enter a La Nina. It was actually a fairly strong La Nina later on in the year. But in the fall and winter, it was weak. But also 2010 has been mentioned several times, and it's similar as well. But I wanted to look at 2007. Let's just for fun, let's look at 2007 and see what happened. Here is October 2007. We hit the 90s, 6th, 7th, and 8th of October. Mid-80s the 17th, and spotty areas of thunderstorms later into the month period, and a couple of cool downs, but nothing drastic. November had some spotty areas of rain. It's hard to read these numbers here, but we were 60s and 70s, then 50s, then 40s, then 70s, then 60s, and then it was a back and forth in November, and I think that is certainly a possibility. December, no snow in December. It was 60s, and then we had some cool attacks, but it was certainly a little more above average in temperature. A lot of rainy periods. Look at that, a lot of rainy days in December of 2007. Then we flipped the year over to January. In January, we had snow events right at the beginning of the year, not a lot, just right at New Year's. And we had a bit of snow in the mid portion of the month, and then again the latter portion, but it wasn't high amounts, only about an inch for the whole month. February, a couple of snow events. We had the Super Tuesday tornado outbreak there on the 6th of February. Remember that, back to our west especially. They had cold attack, which ended as snow. Makes sense. And then we had another cold attack later in the month, but that was only about 3 inches. And then as you get into March, we did actually have some snow in March. We ended up with 6 inches for the month. We had a cold attack there, and I think the other one was right in here that we had. So we ended up all together with about 11 inches for the winter of 2007. I'll stop doing that. 2007 and 2008. Our average is 1.5 feet, 12.5. We had 11. So technically, that would say a near average snowfall for the winter season if we were to have a repeat of 2007 and 8. Again, the years are never exact, but if they were to be similar, it would match probably that kind of a setup where we have a lot of warm air at play, but also a lot of moisture at play. It's all about where they match up, because while I said we had 11 inches here, snowfall amounts just west of here, very close to wave country, were tremendous. So it was all about matching all that moisture with the cold attacks the right overlapping times. And that can certainly happen in a setup like this, but sometimes it doesn't. That's all I'll say for now until I get to the winter forecast on Halloween night. There's your teaser.